Jordan Peterson defends his opinion strongly against the woke culture.
I don't like to see the postmodern neo-Marxists use the transsexual issue as a lever for pushing forward their political nonsense. The reason I wouldn't use the words Z and Zer and all those other made-up words, however many there are now, is because I'm not willing to cede the linguistic territory to postmodern radicals. There's no reason I should believe that. I don't believe anything you say. I think you're contemptible, cowardly, ideologically motivated, cult-like corruptors of the youth. So why would I use your language?
Jordan Peterson just took down woke ideology with his bold stand, with his no-nonsense style and outspoken opinions. He has once again cracked the brittle shell of political correctness and fights for free speech.
People have complimented me on my bravery, which is something I'm not particularly comfortable with. It's not that I'm brave. I'm way more afraid of not saying what I have to say than I am of saying it.
Get ready, because Jordan Peterson's comments will leave the woke crowd speechless and have everyone else nodding in agreement. This is the type of intellectual takedown they didn't expect.
Almost everyone who's biologically male identifies as biologically male. Almost everyone who identifies as biologically male dresses and acts male. That's the gender identity element. And almost everybody who is biologically male, who identifies as male, who dresses as male, is in fact heterosexual. Those things are incredibly tightly linked, but the technical claim in the legislation is that they vary independently. Wrong.
Jordan Peterson, the Canadian psychologist, professor, and writer, got his fame from his strong stance on gender identity. He believes the key differences between men and women are based on biology, not just made-up societal ideas. He argues that the woke agenda ignores these biological facts, even though science clearly supports them. For Peterson, the connection between biology and gender is undeniable. They're deeply linked and can't be separated.
And the reason that the radical social constructionists who are pursuing this line of reasoning, which is completely discredited as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's any better than claiming that the world is flat. The reason that they're pursuing it legally is because they know perfectly well that they've lost the scientific discussion.
Jordan Peterson strongly criticizes the woke gender theory. What frustrates him the most is that some academics are pushing the idea that there are no biological differences between men and women, which is completely absurd to him. Peterson argues that there's a perfect link between biological sex and gender identity, and ignoring this fact isn't just wrong, it's dangerous and goes against scientific evidence.
I mean, I debated someone on Canadian public television who had the gall to say that the scientific consensus over the last 4 decades was that there was no biological differences between men and women. I mean, and that was one of the things that was so absolutely absurd about that, and there were many things that were absurd about it, was that I was in trouble with the university at that point, and he wasn't.
Peterson correctly highlights that this idea that the differences between men and women are socially constructed is just another woke lie. He points to psychological and neurological studies that have proven the clear differences in brain structure and how men and women process information, noting that these differences have been well researched and documented. So, Peterson's message is clear. Men and women are fundamentally different, and rejecting these differences for the sake of woke ideology only leads to confusion and harm to society.
Professionals are bound by law to offer gender-affirming advice. They're bound by law.
Bound by law. He claims that experts, such as psychologists and doctors, are now required by law to provide gender-affirming advice, even if it is not in the patient's best interests.
Now that's being shaped by this cultural fad that insists that if you feel uncomfortable in your body, it's because you're of the opposite gender. That's the psychological epidemic part of it. But now you're duty-bound by law, if you're a professional, to say, oh, you think you're a boy? Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely, 100%, you are. What can we do to facilitate that move forward?
Jordan Peterson feels that the quick move towards gender-affirming treatment and identity politics is due to cultural and legal forces, but without sufficient professional examination, particularly for vulnerable teens who may be suffering from anxiety, depression, or other body discomfort issues.
Problem with that is, you see, if you're a therapist or a physician, you don't affirm someone's identity. That's not your job. And your job is not to deny their identity either. Your job is to help them explore their identity and hopefully to develop it.
Instead of assisting people in critically exploring their identities, professionals are being told to just go along with the popular social woke narrative.
So now you're suffering from, unspecified self-consciousness, and the culture twists around to offer you a narrative. And the narrative is, oh, well, you're in the wrong body.
Peterson argues that this woke movement is like past psychiatric trends, where social pressure led to waves of diagnoses, just like multiple personality disorder or bulimia was.
Teenagers are wired to go along with the crowd. And then if the crowd is offering something pathological, that happens all the time. You get a psychological epidemic.
He points out that vulnerable teens, especially those feeling unpopular, lonely, or rejected, might be drawn to identifying as another gender to feel special and brave, as they are then part of this popular and protected woke group, which lets them escape feelings of rejection, but it often makes their mental health issues worse.
And the rule basically is that if you confuse people about a fundamental element of their identity, then those who are already so confused they're barely hanging on are going to fall prey to that, and all hell's going to break loose.
Peterson argues that the way society talks about gender identity is just another example of the woke movement pushing ideology over science. He says that these identity changes are being pushed not only by the media, but also by laws. And this could have serious long-term consequences.
The rates of transgender transformation requests were skyrocketing, and even the people at the clinic knew that they were rushing people along the transformation pipeline way faster than they should have without proper clinical evaluation. There's 1,000 lawsuits out against the Tavistock in the UK now.
According to Peterson, the emphasis should be on people's psychological well-being, rather than pushing them to accept identities that may not reflect their genuine needs or experiences. So, how to stand up against this radical woke ideology without being canceled? This is a question Peterson was asked during an interview. Let's listen to his answer.
Yeah, by the time you find yourself in a situation like that, where that question becomes particularly germane, you probably already made 1,000 mistakes.
Peterson points out that woke culture has slowly taken over academic institutions over the years. He first noticed it back in the 1990s at McGill University, when ethical committees started to restrict research. This trend continued at the University of Toronto, where he saw a huge increase in administrative rules that he believes threatened academic integrity. Peterson wanted to go against this, but he got this question back.
Consequence of not saying what you have to say is, because I studied totalitarianism for 40 years. And in a totalitarian state, no one ever says what they have to say.
He says that many academics stay quiet because they're afraid of being canceled by the woke mob. Peterson argues this makes people feel pressured to hide their real thoughts, causing a lot of inner stress. However, staying silent has much worse consequences.
I know perfectly well what the consequence of not saying what you have to say is, because I studied totalitarianism for 40 years. And in a totalitarian state, no one ever says what they have to say.
He argues that staying quiet can harm people's inner self because it creates a culture where everyone feels forced to be dishonest. He compares the woke culture with totalitarianism, claiming that both of them are based on widespread lies.
The reason that totalitarianism is total is because everyone in a totalitarian state lies about absolutely everything all the time to everyone.
He contends that under totalitarian governments, people lie to themselves and others, creating a culture of fear and conformity. This shows the danger of letting strict beliefs or ideology control people and stop them from expressing their true thoughts.
Every time you lie, you've just allowed yourself to become possessed by the same tyrannical spirit that's at the core of the totalitarian state. And you might think, no, I'm lying. It's like, no, the spirit of the lie is making itself manifest within you. and you are participating in your own possession. That's what's happening.
Peterson advises people who might lose their jobs due to cancel culture to prepare in advance by updating their resumes and looking for other job options. He stresses the importance of having a backup plan to protect themselves from the control of totalitarian woke forces. Being prepared allows them to speak their truth without risking their career and income.
And so I'm way more afraid of that than I am of the consequences of saying what I have to say.
He understands that speaking up against woke culture may have serious personal implications, including mental health issues or loss of reputation. This happened to multiple people Peterson knows. However, his message is clear. He emphasizes that although speaking up might be costly, the penalty of remaining silent is considerably worse. Peterson's message, the woke culture is destroying freedom of speech and honesty while pretending to help the society. He urges people to think critically and speak their truth, putting mental well-being above social pressure. For him, this fight isn't just about free speech. It's about protecting a healthy society where people can be true to themselves without fear. Peterson believes the way forward is through courage, standing up to these ideologies and refusing to let them control our thoughts and beliefs. If we have the guts to speak out, we can bring back the values that keep society strong and honest. And that's just the beginning. Peterson isn't finished destroying woke culture, and he wants others to do the same. So, what do you think? Is woke culture truly helping society progress, or is it causing more harm than good? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe to see more fiery takedowns of the woke culture.